think that would be my advice. Ask yourself some hard questions. Who are the people around you? What do they add to your life? What do you add to theirs? What is it that you find important? What do you find interesting? What do you enjoy? All of those things, whether you are going to enter the workforce or you're going to travel, like those answering those questions will help you. And so I think just sitting in and asking those difficult questions of yourself, and of the people around you too. What does that person add? That those are really important things, and something I wish I did a heck of a lot earlier, frankly.
In 1837, Horace Mann created the education system, a system at the time designed to pump out factory workers and professors. The same system that is still being used today in the 21st century. Now, Mann's system is backfiring. We are being moulded by the same industrial system that has existed for close to 200 years. That system delivers us into a digital economy that has no need of our outdated skills. This isn't our teachers' fault. This isn't the government's fault. This is due to a rapidly changing world full of technology and unforeseen circumstances. And us Gen Zs are caught in the middle. Welcome to the Driven Young Podcast, the podcast for stressed, overwhelmed young Australians, teaching you practical life skills you can implement now to set yourself up in life. And now your host, Byron Dempsey.
Welcome back to the Driven Young Podcast, and today I'm joined by Kirsten Sleiman. Kirsten is an undergraduate student completing a dual Bachelor of Journalism and Bachelor of Science Zoology major, who plans to break the mould of science communication and documentary filmmaking. Now that is very niche, so why have I got Kirsten on the podcast? Well, this week's episode is all about self-discovery as well as finding your feet in STEM. STEM stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Math. Kirsten is unique because she decided to go to university at 26 years old, and she actually created her own degree in a sense. She discovered two things she's passionate about, science and communication, and studied those two subjects, creating her own field in a sense. Today we talk about what Kirsten did before she was 26 and went to uni, how much traveling changed her life, how to get into STEM in a non-traditional way, how to discover what to do with your life, and immediate next steps to take, and so much more. As per usual, please DM me or Kirsten on Instagram if you enjoyed this episode. If you live in Sydney, check out my upcoming Gap Year program this December. Grab a copy of my new book, 18 and Lost, So Are We. Take the Are You Ready for Uni quiz. All the links are in the description below. Now, over to Kirsten. All right, Kirsten, welcome so much to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
This episode, we're going to be talking a lot about, as usual, we're going to be talking a lot about after high school, what your next steps are, specifically more in the STEM field, which stands for Science, Technology, Maths and Engineering. Yes. Engineering and Maths, bad spelling there. Very linear, very, I guess, traditional pathways, and a lot of what we learn in school are STEM. But you've taken a bit of your own approach on it. And so this is for people who might be interested in STEM, but not so much interested in like the traditional lab coat wearing experiments, but more what to do with the data and all that sort of stuff. Sounds very specific, sounds very niche, but we will keep it broad and a bit of both. So before we get into that kind of stuff and funding and grants and all that, I'd love to just know a little bit about your life, what you did after high school specifically, and what you're currently up to.
Yeah, for sure. I had a really different entry into university. I was in a career for nearly 12 years. I found myself in London. I thought, travel was such a joy. So I did as much of that as I could while I was working. But while I was there, I really realized that it helped me unpack what my next steps were. So I was 26 when I decided that I was going to change my career, and it was a completely different career path, and it came to me out of the blue. I knew I wanted to change, but getting to that point, uni had never seemed like an option to me. It didn't seem like it could fit into my life or it was an option. So it surprised me a lot that that's where I ended up, and very late in life as well, later in life. Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And so what did you do right after high school, sorry?
So I entered the workforce straight away. I worked with my family. I worked in finance, and spent 12 years. I mean, a completely different career to where I am now.
That's something I see is very popular. You saying, I switched my career at 26 is very common, I think. And I think a lot of people think it's uncommon. It's like, whoa, you switch your entire career. It's like heaps of people do that because so many people aren't sure what they want to. You're 26, you're still so young. And especially at 18, it's like, yeah, I picked something when I was 18. I didn't know what I wanted when I was 18. I was 18 years
Mm.
old. How could I know what I want? And now I'm going, okay, now I've got the maturity to realize, actually, maybe I want to go this way. And so at 26, you went back to, or not back to, you went to university, didn't you?
Yeah, for the first time. And I've got to agree with you because as soon as I started talking about wanting to do this, people were really shocked. I had a few people reach out and say that that's what they had done. But yeah, it isn't common. But to me, it made a lot of sense because, if I had gone to uni before that moment, I wouldn't have known what I was going to do. I would have just gone because I don't know, it made sense.
Mm.
And I can't see that would have been very easy for me to succeed there. So I'm really, really grateful that I sort of took that journey and really advocate for it. So yeah, at 26, I enrolled in a dual degree, a Bachelor of Science and a Bachelor of Journalism, which is a 4-year degree together. So yeah, a lot of people were sort of saying, you're going to graduate when you're 30, but I think a changing career path really needs to evolve and change with you and your interests. And so if a couple of years from now I change my direction again, that makes complete sense to me if that's what I want and what I'm passionate about. So
Yeah, it's so important people understand that like at 26 you going to university might seem like a big deal when you're 18 and stuff. It's like, whoa, 26, you're so old at that age. It's like no one really cares. It's like university is full of all different ages. You've got people who are 50 years old doing their masters. Actually, my most recent episode, Justine, she's got whatever amount of qualifications, very intelligent woman, and she's doing a master's in like family therapy or something, and she's got a group of other people and they're all like middle-aged, they've all got kids and everything at university. And so this idea that like you're going to be old or be like, I know I have to go to university while I'm young, god forbid I be 25 when I'm doing university, is so silly. And I think the wrong way to look at it, because you're better off to take time off to figure out what you want to do and then go to uni when you're 20 or 21 or even 26, going, okay, this is, now I know what I want to do, this is really aligned, rather than jumping in because of the wrong reasons.
yeah, I agree. I think the idea that you know what you want to do and you stay in that path for your entire life, that's really ancient feeling to
It
me. It
is.
just doesn't make a lot of sense. I worked this out at 26, and I'm going to do another degree after this. But I would really advocate for people just to have more of an open mind. That if you're interested in something and you want to pursue it, there's a lot of structural, financial things in place to help you do that, especially here in Australia. So I think you really have to take advantage of that, and at whatever time in your life that you're at.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's very important that people can hopefully understand this at a young age. I feel like a lot of people need to live it before they can really comprehend it. They'll be like, they're
Mm.
21 going, oh, now I understand what you guys meant. I thought I'd feel old at 21. It's like, no, you really don't. You've got lots of time. And so, yeah, I think it's important that people can hopefully understand that. And I don't know what's going on in people nowadays. Obviously, with COVID and everything, it's kind of a different scene.
And I think one of the best things that I did was travel as well, because leaving Australia, and you travel so far, things are so different. You can't,
Yeah.
get to London in a short amount of time. And I lived there for many years, traveled through Europe, and it just really helped me understand how big the world was. And so in a kind of scary way, it showed me how many options there were, but it helped me better understand who I was. You face a lot of challenges when you're traveling, a lot of different experiences. I really advocate for that. I would love to see that, more people took that pathway, because through school, it's such an intense 12 years. How are you meant to stop at a certain point and work out what it is that you want and who you are? I think people need to hit the pause button at that point
Mm,
and, you know, and ask themselves those questions.
yeah.
What is it that I want? What fulfills me? What's the next step? I think if you were able to make that decision and transition from straight from school into university, that seems incredibly challenging to me. I really advocate for taking that time out.
Well, it's the key word I think is self-discovery. It's like
Mm.
take some time to do self-discovery, because School does not teach it at all. They do not teach you
Mm.
anything about yourself and being able to, recognize what's going on in your body, recognize how to deal with, mental health stuff, how to deal with anxiety, how to deal with stress. They don't teach you anything about that,
Mm.
which is mind blowing to me. So you've really got to work on that when you graduate high school. And I think, that's why I'm working on this gap year project, so that it's like a break. So you've just done
Yeah.
12 years of schooling. Why not have a break, have fun, learn, travel, meet new people, do all of that, and you're going to learn so much about yourself and about the world. It's crazy how many people I have on the show who say exactly what you just said. They're like, I went traveling and it was one of the best things I ever did. No, I've never heard anyone in my life say I went traveling and I massively regretted it.
No, neither have I. I mean, self-discovery is the best word. I discovered so much about what I wanted, who I was, but also what I was capable of, And I think that now as an adult, when I take on a big task, like I've just graduated my 4-year degree, and it's really important at that point that I have to stop and take stock and reassess again so that I can make my next step. And I think that's something that I wish they did teach us, was to take that time out. Life isn't about just constantly working so hard either at study or at work. So that jump, that push to move from straight from school into the workforce, a career, or university, that just seems mad to me. I really wish that was different.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it is. Mad is a good word. Mad is a really good word, actually. I think it is mad that I think it should be like a legal requirement that everyone takes a gap year or takes a year off. I can only see benefits from that. I think it would reduce the dropout rate of university, which is high. 1 in 3 people drop out before the first year of university and why is that?
Mhm.
Because they're picking something that doesn't align with what they want to do, and they're not sure what they want to do, among many other reasons. But yeah, I think traveling, self-discovery, everything like that is all, what I'm really trying to push with this gap year project. And even if you
Mm.
don't want to join the gap year, or you live in a different country or anything like that, you can travel, you could study abroad, you can study and travel at the same time. There's so many options that are exciting to me, rather than just, getting up, catching a train into the city to go to uni, or doing half your course online, which to me just sounds
Yeah.
really mundane and not very exciting. Give yourself a break. I think 12 years of schooling is really intense, and especially the HSC is very, very intense. So you deserve some time
Mhm.
off.
Absolutely. And I think like what that's looked like for me in practice is that, when by the time I'd gotten to university, I felt like it was almost like I had something that my colleagues didn't, because I knew why I was there. I didn't know the outcome, but I knew why I was there. And so that really drove me every day. And university is incredibly hard, and finding
Mm,
opportunities while you're there outside of the degree, all of that incredibly challenging. But to have that drive behind me and that knowledge, that sense of direction, that I felt like that really was such an asset to me. Yeah, so
yeah.
I think it only benefited me, and so much so.
Mm, awesome. Well, I mean, I feel like I'm beating a dead horse here, because I always talk about this on the podcast, but I don't mind talking about it again, just because it's like, if people listen, hopefully this message can start to drill into them and recognize that this isn't just my opinion. I'm shoving it down your throat. It's you
Mm,
agree. All these other people I have on the show all agree. I'm not finding people who agree with my opinion. You reached out to me. People, I bring them on the show. I have no idea what their story is, and they all seem to agree with this message.
yeah.
And so hopefully they can understand that. Before we move on, I would say, I don't know if you know, I've got my book coming out here, 18 and Lost, So Are We, which is, eight authors. I'm one of the 8 authors. I'm chapter 2. In my chapter, I wrote about two fictional characters, Sarah and Josh, comparing them. One took a gap year and kind of went to Europe to and started a little online business. One went to become a doctor, and he's got lots of money, lots more traditional success. But we kind of analyze the difference between them and which one is really success, which is kind of what we were just talking about here.
That's awesome. And I think, yeah, like I'm so glad that you're doing this. And as you say, I reached out to you. If I think though people make you feel like it's not possible. If
Mm,
people, choose to go straight into work, and there's so many societal, cultural, financial pressures that push you toward that choice, but it's so incredibly possible, and there are so many options, as you've said. So I completely agree, and I love what you're doing. I think that's why people are so attracted to this space, and we need more support to help people do that. If it was mandatory, I would definitely get behind that.
Thank you. Yeah, well, I mean, other countries have like mandatory military service. So it's like
Absolutely. I
there's stuff
visited
out there.
Israel last year. They have a very long military service. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's pretty intense, but there's stuff out there where like you have to do. Anyways, let's move on to more of what we wanted, I guess, the meat of the episode. So you are currently in science and communication. Did you want to explain, I guess, what that actually means and what your role is?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll explain kind of how I landed on it. As you said, when people think about STEM fields, science, technology, engineering, maths, they think about people in a lab coat. And that's certainly what I studied at school when it came to science, what comes to my mind. But, I grew up just absolutely in love with the natural world. I mean, obsessed, crawling up creeks, looking for bugs, all sorts of things like that. I just loved it. And when I think about science, to me, I think about Attenborough and his beautiful films. And so when I realized that I wanted a different direction in my life, I thought about all the things that I love, and that just was so forefront to my mind. But uni never felt like an option to me, as I said before. So I really looked at, okay, well, I couldn't wear a lab coat. That's not really what I want. But what David Attenborough does is communicate science, and I thought, well, gosh, that's what I want to do. How can I make that happen? And I'm from Queensland, so I found a degree there, this dual degree, that I thought, well, I can marry those two together, communication and science, and just see what happens. They are two separate degrees, so I really had to do a lot of work to pull them together. But I thought, you know what, I'm just going to give it a go and just see what happens. And what happened was I got ridiculous amounts of support from people in communication, advocating for science communication, and on the other side as well, scientists advocating for this field. So it is really non-traditional. It's not common. Certainly people communicate science, right? But it's arguable how well that's done. There's a huge rise in misinformation. I mean, the position we find ourselves in now is terrifying with regard to misinformation. So
I
for
mean,
me,
with COVID, has it not just been amplified?
absolutely gut wrenching, and for somebody in the field, even I find it difficult. So, how is anyone else meant to be navigating this? It's atrocious. And, so I really advocate for this space. I think that if we can communicate science in a way that's engaging, then, because people adore science, people are really interested. They want to find out. They want to know more. And when it comes to these humongous challenges like COVID, climate change, how are we meant to navigate those things if we don't understand them? And so for me, my career has really evolved from an interest and what I saw as a need, but has moved forward from there as something I see as absolutely crucial to not only Australia's future, but how are we meant to tackle these global issues if we can't help people understand them? We need to move forward as a society, not one or two scientists. They're human issues that we're talking about, not issues of science alone anyway. So yeah, I'm obviously super passionate about it, really advocate for it. So yeah, so that's in a nutshell what science communication is.
So it's kind of like you're raising awareness for certain types of projects in science, because obviously scientists are good at what they're good at, which is being scientists and doing the math and the chemistry and all that stuff, but they're not probably good at marketing and raising awareness to what they want to do. So I guess you're trying to fill that gap.
Yeah, it can look really different. So I can work with a scientist and help them, communicate their work. Or you can work on a larger issue. But in a really general sense, science has its own language, right? And makes it really difficult to access. And so I try to pull that out without losing, the complexity and what's at the heart of the work, but just allow anybody to sort of pick it up and engage with it and understand it. You can't do that now. You can't pick up a scientist's work because they'll publish it in a journal. And for anyone that's outside of their specific field, it won't be understood. And so it's just about, let's use some more common language and help people understand and engage with it.
Well, this is what I do at with a lot of stuff I talk about. Like, it's really and this is a big gripe I have with like professors or teachers a lot of the time. It's like, yeah, I'm a professor. I teach at university because I've been in this field for 20 years. Okay, that means you know everything about this field. That's great, but have you learned how to teach? Have you
Mm,
studied how to present and how to teach? At Empower You, this program I run, it's 24 hours of content in 2 days. So 12 hours day one, 12 hours day two. And I've spent like over a year learning how to present and how to keep everyone engaged, how to use language so it's simplified. Because we're talking to 15-year-olds here and to
mhm,
18, 19-year-olds. And it's like we spent so much time perfecting that art of presenting and teaching and communicating. And not many people do that. They just think, I'm an expert in this field, therefore I can teach it. It's like, no.
mm,
And I think that's where it can be very difficult if you've got like a scientist who knows this language and is speaking this, and they put it out there, but it's not sexy. It's not. I'm not going to understand it. It's too dry for me.
mm.
And so I guess if you take it in a way and you can make it a bit sexier and a bit easier for people to understand, because when they understand it, they're more likely to get on board.
That's right. Yeah. And I think what Attenborough does with his films is really remarkable in that, because you experience it. You don't just hear it and understand it, you're experiencing it. But I think that, in Australia, we don't do collaboration or innovation really well. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, collaborating between a student and a teacher so that they can understand, communicating between a scientist and the community, and, innovating, finding ways to do that. And, we're not necessarily very good at doing that. And so I think it feels a bit out of the norm a lot of the time, what I do. And I'm sure you feel the same way. But innovating and creating something new, that's how we need to move forward. If you identify an issue, you can't use the same tools to fix it that created the issue in the first place. So, I wish there was more of that. Yeah, but really advocate for it. I think if there's something you're interested in or a problem that you see, just get creative
Well,
and
that was going to be my next point, because I mean,
mm,
we don't want to go too detailed into science and communication because this is very niche.
mm,
It is really interesting though. I love how you've kind of married the two together. But I think that the key point of and why I wanted to bring you on and talk about was how you found something that doesn't really exist. Science communication.
mm,
There is no degree for it. You mentioned you found two separate degrees, and the degrees themselves were fine, but you just spent a lot of time, marrying them together. Like, okay, I've got communication skills, I've got science skills, but now how do I put them together? And
mhm,
so that it doesn't exist in terms of what you exactly needed, but you found a way. And that's what I talk about a lot in this podcast. It's like, if you find a problem that you're passionate about, you can find a way to make money and make a living off it. You don't have to go down these other routes that are considered maybe a plan B or a safer pathway. Now, you might not make as much money as being an engineer or a doctor or
mm,
a teacher, or I don't know, whatever it is, whatever your backup plan is, or whatever the safer route is, but you might be more fulfilled. How fulfilling is it to communicate a scientist project so he gets funding and then he's able to do what he's good at and he can help solve lives or solve huge problems? Like, that's very fulfilling.
I mean, let's just say there's things that are way more important than money,
Mm.
right? And what drives me isn't money. It'd be silly if it did, because it's a difficult field to make money in. And yeah, I completely agree. I think that you can find a way to make these things happen if you're being creative and being really innovative in your thinking. And that's what I've tried to do. But you've really got to think about what it is that you value, and I think we get pushed so hard in terms of money, but I can't tell you how much more valuable my work is to me and how much better I can do it. I had this separate career, and when I look at the work that I did there, sure, I was a hard worker there. I still did good work, but now I live and breathe this. I adore it. It doesn't feel like work at all,
Mm.
and it is a heck of a lot of work. I mean,
Mm.
I've probably never worked harder for anything to create these opportunities and things, but it is so fulfilling and so worthwhile. So, as I said before, it motivated me at uni with that challenge, and it motivates me now because it's what I love and what I really believe in.
Wow. I mean, that's so cool. And I love hearing people like you who say that word, it doesn't feel like work. And it's like,
Mm,
that's always the best thing, I think. And there's people who argue, There's different ways to approach life. Like I know people who will not enjoy their work, but it pays well, and so they'll work at that, and then they'll go do their hobbies and stuff. And that's a great way to do it if that's what you want to do. My personal belief is, how many hours in our life do we spend at work? It's a lot. It's a
Mm.
good percentage of our life. So
Yeah.
you might as well try find something you enjoy and you love. And it's easier said than done for sure. But as we mentioned, you didn't discover it until you're 26, and lots of people don't discover it until they're 35. Lots of people never discover it.
Mm.
So don't put this pressure, especially for young people at like 18 or 19, they have to discover it, which links back to what we said earlier about self-discovery, figuring out
Mm.
what you want to do.
And I think the only thing I'd correct you on is to say you may never find it. I think you absolutely will if you're looking for it and you're asking yourself those questions about what is it that I find important, and just believing that there is a possibility that you, whatever it is, you might want to be an astronaut and you're there sitting, like I was working in finance. Well, there are pathways toward that, and as soon as you start working towards it, you're already there.
Absolutely. And I mean, yeah, I was more saying like some people never find it because, and
Mm.
the main reason is probably because you're not looking.
That's it.
If I agree, if you're looking and you're actively making an effort, you'll eventually find it. You can't not because you're putting in
Mm.
work. I think a lot of people will settle for something and really that's it. They'll settle.
Yeah, and I
Um,
was there for that 12 years. I had no passion about finance, and it made a lot of sense. It earned me money. It helped me travel, and I'm very thankful for that. But I knew I wanted something different. I knew I needed more, and when I think back to that, I'm just so grateful. I'm so grateful that it happened, but I'm very grateful that I was able to find that different direction because my life, it just sort of blossomed from that point, as did I think that I just have grown so much in that time and, have become someone that I'm really proud of
hmm.
as well.
Yeah, which is awesome. Like it's really great to hear. But linking back to what you said before about when we're talking about money,
Hmm.
people who know my show, and I'm a big advocate that we should be learning more financial literacy and how to manage our money. And here's the
Mm.
thing: applying it to your life, even if you're on a lower paycheck than you were at your job, you're enjoying it, you're loving it. Money is still important. You need money to survive. You need money to live, to travel, all that sort of stuff.
Mm.
If you can start saving and be smart from a young age, a lot of that won't matter because you've got it saved and you've got that financial habit and you're not living beyond your means. And so you don't need $100,000 job or $150,000 job. You can live very comfortably on 60, 70, whatever it is that is, equivalent to you. And obviously I've got other episodes on money and finance, but that is where it's kind of like having that money and having that savings allows you to take bigger risks
Mm.
because you've got that backup and you've got that safety net.
And I think because you work super hard. If you have $100,000 job, I'm sure you do. But working and saving for it, that money is more valuable because you've got those habits that come along with it that will
Mm,
support you throughout your life. So, yeah, I'm grateful that my family brought me up in that way, and so when I decided to travel, that was something that was possible, and as was university. And we're very lucky here in Australia that we have support for those things too. But, would I have survived 4 years of university without those habits? Absolutely not.
mm,
It's you get I'll study here, which is great, but I was working 2 degrees, so finding work in amongst that is really hard. And if I wasn't able to work and save and be pretty frivolous, not frivolous, yeah, then I wouldn't have been able to do it. So, yeah, I really advocate for those things being taught a lot earlier on, and why I really champion what you're doing here.
yeah, well, thank you. Again, it's super important that we can understand just the benefits. And once again,
Mm.
it's similar to what I said earlier on. It's easy for us to look back and be like, yeah, money and finance is so important. But for a young person to get it through their head and be like, okay, now I understand it. Now I understand it. That's what I'm hoping episodes like this
Mm.
can do,
Yeah.
because it's just crucial that you can get on top of this.
And I know I've used the words, creative and innovative so much, but turning this into a finance thing. So I'm facing a challenge at the moment where I've been offered a position in a very prestigious master's degree, best in the world, best film school in the world. Attenborough himself teaches into it. Ludicrous. It has never had an Australian student, which is appalling. And so something that it's a dream position for me, but something that's I feel really important to Australia more generally. But it's been so difficult for me to find funding to support that, which sounds pretty grim. But what I've had to do is be really creative and thinking about, okay, well, how can I earn money myself? Where can I find opportunities? Who can I speak to? Those sorts of things. And look, it's been really hard. I take nothing away from that. But I have been so humbled by people in my community, people outside of my community. There should absolutely, nobody should have to, work that hard to access funding for their education. But the moment that you start to be creative about it, there are opportunities. And so, yes, it's really hard. I don't take anything away from that, but, there are opportunities there and you can create opportunities. We're so lucky to be able to innovate in that way. I launched a crowdfunding 7 days ago, and it's at 75% of its goal, which is
Wow.
humongous. So I think
And
that.
that's not, you don't have like a massive social media following or anything. Like you're
Oh
not like
no.
some influencer who launched a crowdfunding campaign and it's, instantly fulfilled. You're just and no disrespect, an everyday person who's been
Mm,
able to achieve this, which is great because my listeners are everyday people. It's like,
mm,
don't think you have to be this famous Instagram or whatever star to do stuff. Like I've seen heaps of people have launched campaigns and just reached out to friends and done lots of stuff because they wanted it.
mm,
There's my mentor Brent who runs Empower You. I mentioned it earlier. He was just like, and this is a grim example, but the point is to get the point across. He said, for any parents out there, if someone kidnapped your children and said you've got to find $2 million in 6 months, and we'll give you your children back, would you be able to find it? Of course, because the
amen.
why is strong enough. And so it's like whatever, and you could do that if it's your sister or your mom, your parents are kidnapped, or your dog was kidnapped.
Mm,
What would you be willing to do? So it's not that you can't do it. It's maybe your why is not strong enough, or you're not
yeah.
wanting to do it. Because I promise you, if you put your mind to something, it's really incredible what you can achieve.
Absolutely. And, my drive in this space really links back to my travel, honestly, because when you travel, you face, and I traveled alone a lot of the time, by choice and otherwise not, but you face challenges you wouldn't otherwise. And so you come out of that experience realizing how resilient you are, how many opportunities there are. And, that has just driven me so much. And so, yeah, it is really challenging. And no, I don't have this huge network at all. But people are very supportive of, people just giving it a go. And look, if I aim this high and I don't get there, I will be so disappointed, but I wouldn't change a thing
Mm,
because this is me, putting everything I've got into this field. And so, as I said earlier, it doesn't feel like work. This is what I need to do. There isn't a choice for me. I really see the value in this, and I'm just giving it everything I've got. So, yes, it's hard, but it is so worthwhile.
yeah. Well, I mean, have you heard of the 6 human needs?
No, I don't
It's
think
just
so.
this it's not backed by science or anything, but it's just like we believe there are 6 human needs that we need in order to live like a fulfillment life. Number one is variety. Number two is certainty. Number three, I can't remember all of them, but like fulfillments in their contribution, love and connection, those sort of things are the 6 human needs. And it's like, well, if you've got those 6 things, fine. Money doesn't really matter
Mm,
at the end of the day. Obviously, it matters as in you need money to survive, but you don't need hordes of it or excess amounts of it, or you don't need massive high paying jobs that you don't enjoy. Because your 6 human needs, or at least a bunch of them, are being met through what you're doing because it's fulfillment, it's unpredictable, there's growth, there's love and connection because people,
mm.
if you can get funding for them, they give you lots of love, etc., etc. And so I think if you can find something that fits a lot of those needs, it's a really good way to approach life and approach your career.
Absolutely. I think that, would I have been able to achieve these things without having a firm understanding of who I am and what I want, regardless of, the career that I wanted, but who I am really fundamentally and what fulfills me, then no, I wouldn't have. If I didn't focus on those things that are, like you've said, so much more valuable than money, I wouldn't have been able to achieve it. And so I think that building that foundation is crucial regardless of what you want to achieve.
Mm.
It doesn't matter the details around that. Doesn't matter whether you pioneer a field or like we are. it's anything that you choose to do, you're going to enjoy a lot more and have a more fulfilled life and feel more able, have more opportunities, if you do fundamentally understand who you are.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
who you are, I know this message, people be like, okay, how do I discover that? Well, we've kind of already said it. Traveling.
Mm,
Not specifically traveling, but traveling is going to help and why traveling? Because it's going to put you in situations that you're not used to, and you're going to discover how you react. You're going to meet new people that are going to open you up to new opportunities. You're going to do all this stuff is going to happen when you put yourself out there, get out of, your hometown, go
mm,
live with people, do all this stuff, and you're going to start to discover who you are and what you want to do with your life. Just Googling or taking quizzes online or, what career am I good for isn't really going to do anything. You've got to get out of your comfort zone. That's how you can
yeah.
discover. And
And I
people
think it's
might,
worth saying, sorry, I think it's worth
that's
saying
right.
as well that, as we've said, knowing what you want to do, it sounds really ephemeral, but it changes. And
Mm,
so who you are today and knowing who that person is about where have you come from? Where do you think you might want to go? But it will change. And it's not a job that ever finishes. It's something that, you need to keep working on, but it's just gives you a somewhere to move from. You might think, oh, this is who I am and this is where I want to be, and you can see the journey between those 2 points, and it's constant, absolutely constant. Just as I might today know that this is what I want to do, but that might change, and that's okay. And I think that in both of those instances, it's just about being open to the change and having a firm understanding of who I am and what I am passionate about. Well, that helps me when things change. So,
mm. Well,
yeah.
you said it earlier. I forget the word you said, but it's very, the modern world isn't you get a job and you work in there and then you retire. Like it's very much, I think the average young person or the average people are now working 7 to 10 jobs throughout their life. Whereas my grandfather, got a job as a builder and was a builder, and then that's kind of it. So this traditional pathway of getting a job and then retiring is very much gone out the window.
Mm,
People are working lots of different jobs within different industries as well, and they're going from here to here to here to here, and I find that exciting because
mm,
the idea of working in one job for me is kind of terrifying and just doing the same thing. It's it's definitely it's definitely not the life I would specifically want to live, but I totally respect it if you do. But I think the world is definitely heading down this multiple career pathways, which is why if you hit 25 or 26 or a certain age and want to change careers, you shouldn't feel guilty. You shouldn't feel like you've wasted your life or wasted time.
mm,
It's just a big part of this podcast is trying to help relieve that pressure people are dealing with that we deal with in Australian society, and I guess probably most of the world.
mm. I mean, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's worth saying that, we're all out here just trying to figure it out. We're all just fumbling around trying to work it out. And the more that I try, the better I feel.
Mm,
So, although it's really scary to think, okay, I recognize I'm unsatisfied by where I'm at, whether that's in a job or at university, whatever it is. But looking at the change, and there'll be people around you sort of shouting from the rafters, like, it's too scary, don't do it. But at the end of the day, the moment that you try, and you might make a wrong choice, and that's okay, because the moment you realize that you are unsatisfied by the place that you're in, um, you're not doing yourself any favors or anyone else around you, for that matter, by choosing to stay. But the moment that you even just start looking and start thinking about it, you'll recognize a difference sort of straight away.
absolutely. Yeah. And I hope people can take this message and really, apply it to their own life and think,
Mm,
depending on where you are in life, am I doing what I really want to do, or am I doing more what society wants me to do, or I'm not too sure what to do? And I actually created an "Are you ready for uni" quiz, which has a lot of these heavy questions in it. I actually I shared it in a teacher's Facebook group, and one of the teachers was just like, some of these questions are a little bit too heavy for my students, and I'm just like, that's the point. It's like,
yeah.
welcome to life. Life isn't going to be easy on them. These questions are supposed to be heavy. They're supposed to get you thinking.
Mm.
And they're not even, I mean, some of them are heavy, but they're not that bad. But it shows just how, I guess,
We don't
soft
really
or protected.
Yeah, we don't have that affinity for difficult questions, though, like difficult conversations. And I think that, if there is something you're not sure of, that you don't feel comfortable with it, but you're not sure why, well, let's just talk about it. And that's
Mm,
really what you do is you let people play with these ideas and have a think about it. But, I'd encourage people to do it in their everyday life. If you get asked, you try to do the quiz that you've created and it's a bit uncomfortable, well, let's lean into it as far as we can, and something will come out of that. Nothing bad can happen from asking a question about why. So you might not know the answer, but that's okay. Now you know that you don't know the answer. And that's more than you knew
Yeah.
to begin with.
Well, I mean, I give a score at the end of the quiz based on the answers they gave, and it'll be like, out of 100%. Now, if they get 90%, it doesn't mean, yes, you have to go to uni. And if they get 20%, it doesn't mean, no, don't go to uni. The score itself ultimately doesn't mean anything. It's just, to give you, really the objective of the quiz was to get you just thinking about these questions, just by having the questions pop up. And even if you pop up and answer it within a few seconds, hopefully it's just triggered, or had you thinking, oh yeah, I never really thought about that. Because people avoid these questions. And if anyone's listening, you can take that quiz for free. It's a link in the bio. But I don't know. I've got a very strong opinion on, I think this generation's too protected. And as a result, once they enter the adult world, they get hit like a truck because you're not as protected in the adult world.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, I would really encourage people just to think about everything in school is geared towards the result you get at the end of grade 12. Everything. So everything's going to point in that direction until you start looking around. And I think that's really challenging, but recognizing that the whole system is set up for you to end up in that place, that it should be questioned. You should be thinking about, well, that doesn't ask what I want or what I'm interested in at all. And, that's really not fair. But I think that the moment you realize it's set up for that, you understand why those pressures start coming at you and why you feel the need to then take that next step straight into uni or straight into work, because that's what it's set up to make you feel like. But it's not set up for individuals. It doesn't ask you any questions about what you care about, where you might want to go, what you're interested in.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, that was a good little rant. I was just thinking that'll be a good little clip. Yeah, I do. Obviously, I agree. I think so much of school is all geared towards your marks, and they prioritize marks over anything else, really, even the students' well-being. Again, this isn't the principal or the teachers. It's more just like the education system itself is really geared towards marks. If you don't fit in within that box of getting the right marks, it can be very challenging for you. So there's a lot to unpack there. But I did want to just, kind of wrap up. And I guess before I get to the final question, was there anything else you wanted to talk about? I know you've managed to find funding for the school that you're going to. You've managed to create your own career path essentially by combining university degrees, because you originally found a problem that you thought was big, and you can help solve this problem. It's very inspiring that you've just figured out what you want to do and created it. It didn't exist, I'll create it. And that's kind of like a growth mindset. It's like, oh, this career doesn't exist. Damn, I'll look at something else. Well, why don't you create it? And I think it's really cool. But is there any other key points you'd love to talk about before we wrap up?
Well, I think you've wrapped me up very nicely, very complimentary. But I just want to say as well, I don't want anybody to feel like there's anything special about me. I said earlier that uni never felt like an option for me. I had a lot of difficulties with school. And it didn't seem like an option because, frankly, it wasn't. I didn't get the grades. I didn't even take the courses you would need. And so, I struggled with ADHD as well. I didn't know that at the time, but, I'm just a person. There's nothing unique or special about me that has meant I have succeeded in this area, that I'm doing this well, other than that, I really spent the time to look at what it was that was important to me. So regardless of your field, and you've wrapped me up very nicely, but I just want to sort of bring myself down a little bit and sort of say, well, I'm just an everyday person. That's just giving it a go.
Yeah. And that's what I love. And that's what my podcast is kind of about. I feel like I've never really brought on anyone who's like super famous or successful. And I could have. I've had offers to have some big name people on. I just wasn't a big fan of them. But I think, and I would love to get some big name people on in the future. But I do feel like the core of my podcast is always going to be, everyday people who are relatable, because I think you can go listen to whoever you want on podcasts who are the most successful people in the world. But you're so far, I think there's a big disconnect between them, because they're 40, they've achieved all the stuff that they don't realize what we're going through as young people. Whereas someone like you, I think, is very relatable. And that's what I really enjoy getting people like you on. And so I do think saying, an everyday person, there's nothing special, is a compliment, because it means that the listeners of the show don't have the excuse that she doesn't have any advantage over you. And that's where it's like, okay, great. If you can really start to understand that, you can go, I could do this. I could, create my own career. I could follow this, blah, blah. I could travel. I can do whatever it is. And really, if you really put your mind to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd hope that would be a takeaway for people, because, I don't see, it's not offensive to say that I'm an everyday person. I am, and I'm just working really hard toward this goal and giving it a go. So, and I would encourage people to try to do that. I think, if they're here listening to you and listening to this conversation and the conversations that you have, they're halfway there.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. That's what I always say. It's like the fact that you're just listening to this podcast has already put you ahead of so many young people, because you're actively searching for stuff. You're, you're taking time to listen to something educational, even though it might not be as entertaining as other things or as fun, but this is educational. And I think, that's how I got to where I was. I was just listening to podcasts, really discovering through books and podcasts, really. Mainly podcasts, because I don't enjoy reading personal development books that much. I enjoy other types of books, but stuff like this is really important. So I think you're right. If you're listening, especially if you've made it this far into the episode, you're crushing it. Good job.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome, Kirsten. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show. But before we wrap up and get to the end of it, I have a final question, which I ask every single guest. And that is, what would your number one piece of advice be to the younger generation, like an 18-year-old or something?
Wow, that's a heavy question.
Yeah, it's tough.
Oh, look, yeah, and we've said so much of it already about, discovering and just asking those hard questions of yourself. And I think that would be my advice. Ask yourself some hard questions. Who are the people around you? What do they add to your life? What do you add to theirs? What is it that you find important? What do you find interesting? What do you enjoy? All of those things, whether you are going to enter the workforce or you're going to travel, like those answering those questions will help you. And so I think just sitting in and asking those difficult questions of yourself, and of the people around you too, what does that person add? That those are really important things, and something I wish I did a heck of a lot earlier, frankly. And something I do regularly is just checking in on myself and my life and making sure that, sure, because it's so easy to get caught up in whatever goal it is I'm working on and neglect that. And I think it's just so incredibly important and a life skill that I would advocate and challenge people to do that.
Well, the quality of the questions you ask dictate the quality of response. So if you want to learn more and get better responses and, just figure out more in life, ask better questions. And that will, if you ask high quality and better questions, that'll change a lot. And yeah, I think understanding that when you graduate school, you're not done learning. It's just beginning. You're constantly learning. You need to be constantly learning, discovering who you are. And it's not going to happen it's not going to happen organically. You need to put in effort to do it. I think that's a good message. Like the self-discovery thing, maybe it'll happen organically, slowly over time. But if you put in effort, you take a year off or you travel, you do this stuff, get out of your comfort zone constantly, you're going to discover who you are and what you want to achieve a lot earlier.
I think it's easy to not pay attention. It's much more difficult to pay attention and ask those questions, but it's much more valuable. The reward is incredibly high. I think you can maybe go through your whole life and not really ask yourself those questions, not really understand those fundamentals of yourself and the people around you and, your direction. But that's doesn't sound valuable to me at all. That sounds awful. And I just think it's really incredibly important. We've got to, things are hard. We've got to take care of ourselves. And how can you do that? Well, you better understand who you are, and, to start answering those questions. So, yeah, I think it's fundamental.
And I actually have on my website, I have resources, a free downloadable 5 questions you should ask yourself, and like 5 really powerful questions. And I can't remember them off the top of my head. But one of my favorite questions is, if you were told you're going to die today in 5 years' time, what would you do differently? And I love that question because most people say, if you're going to die tomorrow, what would you do differently? If you're going to die in a year's time, and it's kind of like, well, and realistically, in that scenario, I would just travel and have fun and spend as much time with my friends and family. But 5 years is long enough where you go, well, I can't just travel. I'll run out of money. it's a kind of a long time, and it's like, well,
Mm.
what do I want to do in 5 years? And I think I would say I wouldn't change too much. I'd keep doing what I'm doing, and for me, that kind of shows me I'm aligned with what I want to do and who I want to be.
Yeah, that'd be my answer as well, and I think it's really important. If you are asked a question like that, or ask it of yourself, and you immediately think about all the things you would change, that helps you so much.
Yeah, exactly. And then you go, well, why don't you change it? Well,
That's it.
because of this, and they make excuse after excuse, and it's like,
Yeah. Well, you're gonna die in 5 years, buddy. Get out of
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
job. Get out of that
exactly,
relationship. My God, you know?
exactly.
And, travel seems really difficult at the moment, and yeah, it is. But you can travel where you are. There are options. So it's not something that people should just write off,
Well, I mean,
you know?
traveling now, hopefully COVID has woken up people to be like, man, I want to, I mean, everyone I know wants to travel as soon as we can. And
Mm,
annoyingly, the rest of the world seems to be, well, not the rest, but a large chunk of the world is traveling. America, UK, they're all traveling around and we're stuck in lockdown still. But, we will open up eventually. And I think go travel, do that
mm,
trip. I've got friends who went straight to university and they've kind of all just graduated. And one of my mates was saying, now I don't want to I don't want to get a full-time job yet. I'm not ready. I
mm.
want to do something. I want to go travel. And I'm like, yeah, dude, do it. Because once you get that full-time job, you might be pressured to climb the corporate ladder. And if you take a year off, you might lose your position. And so you never want to take time off. When you're young, you've got no kids, you've got no responsibilities. You can take a year off and travel and just live in hostels and spend little money, spend, $10 a day on food and stuff. And you can live that lifestyle. Your body can
Yeah,
handle it. Maybe not so much
absolutely.
when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I traveled so much when I was younger, and I mean, I'll never stop traveling. You probably say the same, but I completely agree. I lived in a hostel when I was in London for nearly 2 years, um, and it gave me so many opportunities. But would I do that again? Probably
Not
not.
now. Yeah. And that's
If
the,
I had to, I'm sure I'd find a way. But
yeah, yeah.
there's just so much to learn, and I would just encourage people. There's no such thing as, well, we'll wait for COVID to pass. Um, just do it. Just do it now. If you know that that's what you want to do. We live in such a unique environment. I mean, I won't get all science nerdy on you, but you can't find so much of what we have in the rest of the world. So just open up your door, just make it happen.
Mm.
See what's out there. Visit the Barrier Reef, go to
That's
the
actually,
desert.
yeah. And obviously right now with Sydney, we're fully locked down. We can't do anything.
Mm,
But like October, in about, 3 weeks, we should be lowering restrictions and we can start traveling around New South Wales again and then hopefully Queensland and stuff. I'm actually
yeah.
going to the Great Barrier Reef in January, which is very exciting.
Oh
So,
my God, where are
you
you
know,
going?
Lady Elliot Island?
I do. There's so many manta rays there. How
Yeah, yeah.
exciting.
It's really
They're
exciting.
so amazing. I've got
Yeah.
no hesitation to plug that island. Definitely go there.
Oh, it's phenomenal. I've been there before.
Mm,
It's my mum planned the trip, and man, we're just saying like we're pretty confident by then we'll be at a high
yeah.
enough vaccination rate. We'll be sweet to travel, but if that gets
Mm.
cancelled, it'll be gutting. But
But the
anyways,
thing is it does present an opportunity. Start saving. You
mm,
know, you
oh
can't go
my
anywhere. You
my holiday savings account is really high right now.
Yeah, exactly. But just start saving. If it's dreadful what's going on, I take nothing away from that, but look for the opportunities and they are there to be found. That's the
Mm.
point.
Yeah, it's the whole growth mindset and how can you what can you get out of this? So for me, like
Mm,
lockdowns really sucked, but there's been benefits. I've been able to do stuff and I've been working on the gap year program. And even though I feel like I've lost a few months and momentum, I'm still doing stuff.
mm.
But yeah, anyways, Kirsten, this was a really fun episode. I think
What a
this was
pleasure.
really
Thank you so
valuable.
much.
I think it's a good generic episode for people to listen to. It talks a lot about the fundamental mindset of this podcast, traveling, discovering what you want to do and stuff. I'll probably title it something about self-discovery. But for anyone who wants to get in contact with you, follow you online, figure out more about what you want to do or what you do and what they want to do, where's the best place to go?
So I have a website, which is kirstensleiman.com, which we can put in the
Yeah.
link. And yeah, I can probably just give you some links, Byron, actually. But yeah.
Yep. And those links will be at the bottom of the show notes as usual. Otherwise, Kirsten, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much. What a pleasure.